My name is Dr. Saliha Afridi, and I am a clinical psychologist and the managing director of the Lighthouse Arabia. Okay. Well, I think it's important for every human being to show vulnerability and to be able to talk openly about how they're feeling and what's happening inside of them. But most importantly, I think for men, there's a lot of shame, a lot of stigma associated with men showing emotion. And, they're raised and they're socialized as having to be tough and stoic and, big boys don't cry. All of these messages that they get from childhood actually make them turn their emotion inwards. And that's why one of the seventh leading cause of death for men is suicide around the world. And so I think a lot of that has to do with them repressing a lot of their emotions, suppressing a lot of their emotion, and then it coming out in ways that are actually quite violent against themselves or against society. So for sure, I believe that opening up about their feelings, talking about what they're going through, having it be more accepted, is very important, but I think we're still quite far from having it be okay. Any socialized behavior that asks a human being to repress a part of themselves is going to be toxic. This can be for women and men, and in men's cases, I think a lot of their self-worth is coming from how are they able to, produce for their family, produce for the community, protect and procreate. This is kind of how they are measured. And so that can actually turn quite toxic because they actually don't have any worth unless they're doing these things. It's very restrictive. And men actually experience a lot of fear, but they're not able to express that. Not only because women or society are not going to accept that, but other men don't accept when men express their difficulties. There's a lot of competitiveness, there's a lot of judgment that comes from man to man, and so there's a lot of loneliness. Whereas if a woman is feeling sad or low, she can go and speak to other women and get some support. If a man goes and speaks to other men, they might be like, okay, well, you need to toughen up, or, why are you acting like a sissy, or, so it's shamed even amongst their own sex. And so I think that makes it even more and more toxic. It's very, very lonely. And then they act out in ways that are self-harm. Well, much of what I just said, boys are socialized to be tough, do not show emotion, and also aggression is actually accepted. And so masculinity that has a lot of machismo, you have to be the tough guy, you have to be the strong guy, and strong means that you cannot show emotion. Feelings are a weakness. All of these are actually associated with toxic masculinity. And that actually becomes even more toxic when the man or the boy or man who is struggling with really difficult issues emotionally then turns to drugs, alcohol, other substances, or work to numb out those feelings. So that increases the toxicity of all of the different emotions that are going on through them. Well, generally speaking, men live 8 years less than women. That's just because of the illnesses that the body can produce just by holding on to emotion. So they actually make themselves quite sick. They're 4 times more likely to use substances, and they're 4 times more likely to commit suicide. So that's just one of the ways that it sort of plays out, that substances have a lot to do with all of those things. But men, women, when you start to use drugs to numb yourself and you're medicating yourself through substances, it impacts every area of your life. It impacts the way, as you can imagine, how you are with your family. It will impact the way you show up to work. Are you able to produce at work? Are you able to perform at your best? Are you fulfilling your potential? Are you contributing to society? Are you able to be the best father or mother, to your child? So it doesn't show up differently in men than it would in women that are abusing substances, but with men, I think there's just a pressure that they actually have to go out into the workforce, where women may not have to do that, stereotypically. But yeah, for men, it will show up in all sorts of ways. I think what we're doing right now is good. We're starting to talk about things. We're actually having men like The Rock and, Michael Phelps, who is a, 24-time gold medalist. I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but it's around that. Quite a high number of gold medals. And we have The Rock, who's the highest paid actor, who's like this huge guy, super masculine looking, but they're coming out and saying, I'm depressed, and I was depressed and I struggled with this. We have the Princes of Wales actually coming out and saying that they struggled with depression. So I think we're making a move in that direction. We still have a very long way to go. I also think that with this Me Too movement and the rise of the feminine and a lot of women getting a voice, I think that we need to be careful in that space as well, because as women get their voice, they might actually shut down the man even more. Because while their culture of patriarchy is there, we cannot assume that every man is that way, and it actually is going to end up hurting them. And so too much masculinity is hurtful, and too much femininity, or I shouldn't say femininity, but the feminine is hurtful. So we just need to make sure that we're balanced about the way we speak up as women, and so we are not shutting down the men. I would want to remind them that, they were little kids once, and they felt all sorts of feelings. When they fell, they cried. When they hurt, they went to their mother or father and they sought support. That's really who we all are. Inside of us, we're all the same. Whether outside we look a little bit differently, and one is a man and one is a woman, our heart and our emotions are not different at all. And so going back and knowing that you are only living half the life that you could be living if you do not express your emotions and if you repress them. So you only are living from the head up, and that's just not a full life. And that when you shut out sad emotions or bad emotions, you are shutting out the good ones too, because the wall that you build to protect yourself from emotions blocks out the good ones. It blocks out the friends as well as the enemies. So the good stuff and the bad stuff is staying outside of. And so if you want to live a life that you're proud of, to live a life that is full of engagement and meaning and love and care, you're going to have to access parts of you that you feel a little bit out of control in that space, which is the feeling space. And know that there is a skill to it. You don't have to just go deep diving into the ocean when you don't know how to swim. So take it step by step and learn the vocabulary of emotions before. Get a coach, get a therapist, get a psychologist if you need to learn how to actually communicate your emotions. Because we know as a fact that it is only human relationships, our loving relationships, that give us the most amount of happiness. And you won't be able to have the depth of emotions depth of relationship unless you are connected to your own emotions.